Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. How is everyone doing? Can you believe we're in April already? If you've seen the previous psychic predictions, I did mention that this year will go fast. So how are you all feeling with that? This is going to be a predictions that I already have, sort of downloaded. There's some triggering in the April, but there's some that's definitely within this year and the next 10 years. So this is an important video. And if you've not seen last year's last couple of psychic predictions, because some of that I brought up for this year and in the themes and in the last one after the themes. So this year I think I've done two, if I'm not mistaken. And we're going to do this one. It might be separated if it gets long. If it is long and we've not separated it, then you can pause it, listen to it when you're doing your parts, whatever floats your boat. It provides us guidance and insight into how the world is transitioning. Now, many people might say that obviously this is New Age, New World Order, and I do advocate that. I've said that in my videos, but this has been happening over time. And if you look back, definitely end of 2018, it started. But, you know, the universe, God, the higher power cannot just suddenly hit us. It has to shed away in different ways. And you connect that and you see a new world order. Now, in my previous read, I've mentioned that we will be in a bit of a global crisis, and you can see that with some of the stuff that's happening, like the tariffs from Duck, okay, and that is kicking off, which means new countries will form region of alliance, and you're going to see the themes, how they connect, basically, where I've said, you know, go to your local farms, the larger agricultural, global industry, farming, is where there's risk of coming out of profit and business. And here we go. It's, you know, if you've not tied that prediction I made, you can see it through the tariffs. I have mentioned tariffs before, even though I didn't really know how they work, because I don't really follow politics. Only through the predictions do I get downloads. So I'm going to go through stuff. I'm also going to attach a video, if this is not a two-part, on certain questions that I got, to this. So firstly, I do want to say this year, and I've mentioned water before, I've mentioned that we have to be careful with water, poisoning, diseases, and floods, tsunamis, weather conditions that, even though it might be, for example, an earthquake, it's going to be rooted from water. And I've been mentioning that, and certainly that is something. I do think there's going to be a virus that comes out, and it's going to be coming out originating from Africa or planted in Africa. Whether this will be the born virus but the water one I feel could be bacterial, okay? So that will be coming out, not now, it will come out, all right? I don't think they're going to be able to control us as much as the big C time, and I can feel someone saying, oh, F no. So with the tariffs, and I'm going to try and go back from latest downloads to onwards, is we're going to see in years to come, like the separate and collapsing of certain alliance groups and regions that become powerful in different ways, you know, so the US, Europe, Asia, Africa. Africa tends to be a lot further behind in terms of what it's doing, but I believe that it will start to come on the train of where it can benefit from trading of its own country goods during this time at the moment. So, you know, when can we expect this kind of thing to calm down with the tariffs and this kind of crisis? I would say we need to really probably, let's say market recovery. We might see a little bit of stability on a few days in May, at the end of May, but I think it's going to be up and down and very volatile at this moment in time. So that's what I say around that. The European economy and Canadian economy might face problems because of the US economy, and this is where I think Canada is going to try to Canada and some of South America, if I have it right. So I would say like Chile, Argentina, Brazil. They're going to try and do some intertrade. So and maybe Canada will strengthen their trade alliance with South America and neighboring states because of the volatility of the US. And Europe will be very much similar. What can they do interconnected? But Europe, I think over the next 10 years, you're going to get a lot of interconnected supply chain, but greenery innovations, and also medical and AI innovations. And this could mean that you might see people traveling to Europe for medical attention, medical, maybe faster waiting times, whatever it is. We're going to see that there will be a reduction on the reliability of the US and China because of what is currently happening. But I do think in the future, after all this and it's stabilized, and you're going to get further predictions on what we need to do at this moment in time, it will go back to a global kind of a trade. I think Asia is going to get stronger in trade power. So, all the Asian states, and I think India is going to try to take advantage of where they can be suppliers or trade maybe with China in this volatility as well. So there's been the big shifts happening, like I said, and decentralized innovation hubs. We're going to see that of the large innovation hubs. There will be blackouts over the next decade, okay? And this will be where, power system goes down, we're kind of off the grid. And it's, if it happens now, we'll still be in panic. But when these happen, there's going to be a good amount of people that are going to be panicked and fear, but there's going to be some people that are going to be like, okay, well, what can I do? I've already established a new rapport with my neighbor, my community, because you've listened to Zain's global advice on the way life is going, and we have to come together, right? So it could mean that the neighbor's like, oh, did you get a shower? Because the water was down. It seems like my water's back on, or I've got a I don't know, I always keep a 5-liter tank. So if you just want a quick rinse, something like that, I'm just giving you little examples. So you then, in the moment you might think, oh, I'm kind of in panic here. But then you kind of like, well, I actually felt better by being disconnected from all the energy. Baron Trump, I am going to do a separate reading on him, because I've done a reading, if you remember, where I said he's very special. So, that still stands. Right. Let's just go back. By the way, they've released Delphi, Richard Allen's investigation tapes. Let me know what you think of it. I've just started looking at it. I'll probably late in it. And there's 2 interviews. And I still stand by my reading. So I've talked about water, and I've talked about the extreme weather. UK, like I said, there'll be days where there's extreme heat. Be prepared for that. Have your electric fans, have fans with batteries if you need to. Some houses are very keep the warm. Some houses take ages to heat up, because England does have a lot of houses, a lot of old houses. So just understand your home and what you can do. But I also see dry desert heat in the US as well. So be careful with that. I also still get this whole thing around obviously water, but then there's fires, there's extreme weather shifts. And there's going to be less people going to churches. There's going to be the collapsing of, of people only believing in the mainstream and more on an individual base than the local big churches. And it's funny because I come from a religious background, and I've started to feel this in myself, like it's the relationship with God. But I'm trying not to part too much from, I come from a religious background, but the family never really were religious. But it's kind of like, what are you? And you'd say your religion, like you're solid in that, solid in faith of God especially. And that's still there, but it's kind of like you start to question how much man has interpreted either, for example, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, etc., and how much of that has got lost in translation. And one translates it in one way. Why can't you understand it maybe from your perspective, So I think there's going to be that, not a movement away from God so much, but for example, why do I have to go to church on Sunday and that's the time, but then during the week you've forgotten God? That's not the way anyway. You're best off remembering God and being in gratitude every day in that single moments. And then if you go on Sunday, there's a collective energy, which is great, but you know what I'm trying to say, I'm sure you do. There's going to be mass awakenings. Okay, we are going to still see deception of media, foreign affairs, deception in that, and feeling the need to take action. A lot of us are going to feel like we need to take action, and I do think there's going to be protests. Remember, I mentioned in the themes, one of the most important things we need to do is get into grounding techniques. Look at, some of us will be looking at what grounding techniques actually ground us. We might have been thinking we need to be at a tree, we need to meditate 20 minutes. And then you realize, actually, when I wake up in the morning and I'm doing my coffee without anyone in the house and it's quiet, that feels meditative and grounding to me. So you find those things. And I think there's going to be people that are looking at their living situation, maybe feeling that it's not for them, or some ancestral healing, looking for more of a sacred space, a deeper family connection. But when you're looking for that deeper family connection, something doesn't feel clear. So your focus may then be on what makes you feel safe, where your values are. Move material wealth versus spiritual wealth. A lot of us are going to be weighing that up. Are you valued where you are? And what holds value to your life? Okay. Some of you, for example, I would say I'm going to say this because I know that I've got quite a few Aries followers. And if you are like a Pisces or Aries and you want a quick card pull, let me know in the next one, because we will add it on, or some guidance for that month. I can give you that. But for example, you might relate to this, but if you are an Aries and you've got strong Aries in your placement, just be aware of this energy that I feel. There could be a spiritual awakening on who you are, a rebirth, a return, a reinvention of yourself. It could be physical, or it could be others' energy, where, for example, you're feeling so much energy from another person or other people, and you're starting to understand that. So you really need to watch for burnout, okay? It's hard to see what's your energy versus someone else's energy, and you're slowly going to be able to see that. But you basically need to avoid any burnout. Boundaries needed, not to deplete yourself, and your immunity is very important. And I say this because also one of my superstar members, I believe, is an Aries, if I remember correctly. Okay, so in April to June, let's go to real estate. I think there's going to be a lot of transformation in real estate, and you'll see how it comes out. It's not going to be how it is at the moment. And then I felt like some underhanded energy around May, June, for quite a few days. Like there's some days that might pose tension and underhanded energy globally, okay? In the first week of April, we would have seen some havoc, okay? And there's war and anger and sharp impacts, like, for example, abrupt war or country decisions that start. And maybe this could have been like the tariffs that Trump, I think the latest thumbnail I saw was, sorry, I'm getting energy moving through me right now. Is it China's? I saw this, it made me laugh, right? I think, what did China say? And then Trump's like, okay, well, your tariff's going to be 125%. I saw that, but I don't know how it came up, and I just started laughing. And it's, so some of you can let me know. The other thing is, there's another case that I wanted to ask you all about. We also have our poll, so hopefully I won't forget to look at that at the end, about spirit boxes. So make sure you vote. Maybe pause and vote now. There's going to be collective impacts, and there's going to be sharp endings and sharp beginnings in something. Transformation on healing elements is coming up over the next few years. Some transformation in health issues, but also the way we look at healing methods. The mysteries of like the ancient history, like the pyramids, or what Cleopatra used to do. Maybe some of you returned to that. What was she used to sit in milk? I think there was something around that where it wasn't just milk and people took it out of context. What's happening with the JFK files? I mentioned it in my last prediction. So is anything come out of that anymore? There's like a sharpness of news that comes up. And I'm not saying about the next few years, I'm saying now in this period of time, April, May, and already we've had some sharpness come up, because this has been downloading for me from March, for April onwards, and March, right? And that's why I say it's not just April. I mean, we've already talked about May, June a little bit. But these sharp shifts also mean that you might suddenly get blessings, karmic shifts. But it also can mean, on the other side, some people feel, something's happening, they don't understand it. And so it's like the mental health, the anxiety, the psychotic, the loss of hope, the afraid. So just understand that energy that could be brewing within you. I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel... I don't feel we're living in, there's something definitely transforming on our living, the energy we're living in at the moment, Earth. It's like, you remember I was mentioning the void and stuff. There's definitely, I don't know if any of you feel it. Like, do you still feel like you're normal, go to your job, come home, and it all just feels the same? Let me know in the comments. Towards the end of April, that kind of psychotic mental health angst might ease a little bit. I'd say from the 25th, 27th onwards, it might ease a little. So, just feel, if you're at the moment feeling like, I'm not sure what is happening, it's going to ease up. I do think round about now, there's probably an exposing a cat out the bag, but it's going to be like, I don't believe it, and you're going to be like, how can you not believe this? This is crazy. The cat's out. It's been exposed. And someone else can be like, no, I'm not believing it. So there's going to be that kind of energy. And there's going to be, around the 25th, 27th, as things ease, there is still going to be something. Dates of 25th to 27th. Yeah, look, there is something that's going to happen around those two dates, give or take, right? So it could be to do with choices, it could be to do with a love affair. And I do think there's going to be an exposure of a love affair or a child coming out. But there is definitely something that goes to blow and triggers. And some people are not going to accept it. I don't believe it. And you will have a choice, all right, to accept it. We're going to have to see what that is. I do think that from the 10th and 12th, the other dates that I get is 10th and 12th of May being quite unsettled. So let's just pull cards on that. I mean, we saw 25th to 27th of April, so mark that on your calendars, 10th and 12th of May. Give or take a day or two. That's that baby that was being exposed in April, apparently. So it could be related to what was exposed in April. So here this is a difficult one. I mean, usually it's not an ending like that, but it does look like there's a loss. It looks like something does take a turn here. But there is kind of like a new energy brewing, okay, where some people have not let go of the past. They do now let go of their past version. I would definitely look at 10th and 12th of April and let's see what comes out on that. And that could even be universal weather, okay? All right, we need to look at that because I definitely think there's going to be weather issue there. There's going to be games around trying to plant diseases, right? This is all, by the way, it's a shedding for us to move into the new. So it's positive. We just have to be aware of it. I don't fear factor any of my readings, okay? So that, just be aware of that. And remember, I mentioned about Africa and a virus and a bacterial element coming up. The next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be the emphasis on spiritual connection or spiritual, less on the physical. For a lot of people, they're going to be transforming into that sort of more spiritual rather than physical. That's it. With that, I was going to say, but don't turn into Laurie Vallow thinking she's a transcendental biblical prophet or something. That was what I was going to ask. Is anyone watching that trial? Okay. There's going to be more action taken for humanity. And this is great news, okay? There's going to be more action taken for humanity or underprivileged groups or what do we call them in the UK? We don't call them underprivileged groups, minorities, okay, minorities. So, but it is kind of, it could be minorities, but it's like you see people coming forward to protect them. This is the mother, right? And this is when we will see it. And we see further how the top-down government and frameworks are dissolving even more because we see how we are taking action. But there will be more dissolving of those frameworks, further up the top. I previously said in recordings about the cyclones, the floodings, but also things like sea border disputes that I mentioned, they're coming up. The anger of the sea, oceans is, if you can during this time, and I'll give an update, try to avoid water travel, okay? The sea is very unpredictable at this moment in time. Just try to avoid water travel if you can. The unfortunate thing with that is, I've also said be careful with flight travel. I think that the flight travel has calmed down. So what we see, although I've said in previous readings, we will see more of a helicopter or a plane coming up, and I've given you certain states. Some of that is actually caused, it's navigation loss, disruption and the elements that I've mentioned. And I do think some of it's drone, some of it's part other universal connection interfering with this satellite navigation. I do want to say satellite navigation, solar sun energy coming up is going to be very strong, where it's going to affect satellites and navigation. So I mean, I think the sea is worse to travel this moment in time. I would not go on a cruise if you're thinking of booking a cruise for this month, next month, okay? Again, there's going to be a lot more exposure coming up. There's going to be someone from the top, and there's also including media scandal coming up as well. You might notice, or some of you might pick up on certain leaders that seem to be going down a spiritual path. You might hear them say, for example, you know what, Freddie, I was listening to the radio and then someone came on, I was about to turn it off, and it was a psychic or astrologist that said this, and it really stood out to me. That like they'll give you certain like things that say, you know, maybe they are turning a bit more spiritual and less on their ego. And I remember in one of my readings on Camilla, I said that she would go out in the garden or in her space, and it seems like she's trying to get connected to the stars and astrology. Can you remember that? And spirits just reminded me of that kind of energy, and maybe that's something that some of you find grounding. But leaders, you'll start to notice they come into spiritual alignment. They might try to avoid it because some of them still are in their ego. Food production, there's going to be a destroyed food production, something that's going to be from fires or floods in anywhere in the world. It's going to be a bit disastrous, okay? And it's not to scare you, but like it happens. We've had the wildfires, we've had the floods. England, please be careful with the water contamination. I'm saying that because we get a lot of rain, and I do think we need to be careful. The other vision I was getting, and I wasn't going to mention it, it might be noted, is that I was getting some parts of the States have heavy snow, all right? And I was like, how can this be? It's April. But I do think there's going to be a couple of states or a state that has heavy snow. I don't know if are any states that sometimes have seen snow, but it's heavy snow. I mean, you're supposed to be going into spring now. So I do see that in a couple of states in the US. And definitely, I think in an area in Canada as well. The world is not ending, you know, so if people are thinking the world is ending, the world is not ending, but it's changing. And so there's scandals coming out. There is going to be something coming out about Elon Musk, okay? The thing is, some of us are not going to feel like it's new news, and some of us will feel like it's, you know, sort of new news. I think it's going to do with, the cards are not showing me, but I think it's going to do with money. The cards are also showing it could be to do with his past, it could be to do with children, a child of his, something of his past when he was a bit younger. I would say, I don't know how old this guy is, probably in his 40s. So I'd say between his 20s and 35. Some kind of ending, but it's something that he actually made a decision to. I do think that there's going to be some kind of scandal with him in terms of money transaction and transfers. That's what I was getting. And the cards also say about something of the past that he'd laid to rest. He'd chosen to lay it to rest in a very abrupt decision, okay, very abrupt. So we might hear somebody of his past coming forward that he did something, but he ended something in a very abrupt way. I think there's going to be some news on Maxwell, you know, Maxwell, what's her name, Epi's wife. There's going to be something around that coming up. Now, a lot of psychics have said about Keir Starmer being gone by now. I think they said last December. I pulled cards, it wasn't showing. I'm going to do a separate read on the UK as well. Keir has some kind of idea, a long-term strategy, okay? It's kind of like planting the seed about something that will prosper in the long term, but at the moment it's not you can't see the results of it. He's moving forward on this, and I think it also has to do with transport and investing in the long term because I've mentioned this before, it's coming back through, innovation around transport mechanisms. This is his current kind of main message coming through, and I will pull further cards. I had a question in the past about, are banks going to totally go down? No, I don't think they are going to totally go down, but do carry just some cash with you. I always advise that. There is going to be something around subways, train, but not underground subway, okay? Something of a train issue is going to come up. I do think that, and obviously this could be in Europe, but I get highly maybe the UK. I don't know, in the US, do you have many trains? I don't hear much about your trains. And I don't think when I visited years and years ago, I did see trains. I presume you do have. There's going to be a huge announcement from China, but be careful on what it is, okay? Because I think it's going to lack in terms of a message. And this was a download on the 22nd of March. So it could have happened, but I don't think it's been massive. I think there's something brewing there in terms of a huge announcement from China. And we need to be careful on what it is and what gets said. A lot of people, you might have felt being triggered in this first 3 weeks of April. So just, if you feel like it needs your energy, okay. If not, then leave it. I think we're going to see people at sea being rescued, some sea activity. I still get Italy, okay. Something around Italy in the weather, earthquake, rumbles. There's going to still be more around London and the government, and Labour Party's policies are shedding up, and kind of maybe some shady stuff in the background. I was getting Arizona or Texas government or something, and I hope this wasn't like a shady download that we're having the Daybell trial coming up, because she's in Arizona at the moment, isn't she? Ohio, I get like a crime or something that hits the news. Something that hits the news, and I feel like it could be a crime or something that comes up. It could have been done in the past, but it hits it now. Elon in the UK, still going to be a tumultuous kind of relationship. I've done a kind of download on that relationship between them. If you're interested, let me know, because I'll do a recording on that. I do think there's going to be mellow movement of the UK government. I don't think there's going to be an abrupt pull-out right now of the UK government. So I will pull cards on that maybe in the upcoming reading. Let's pull cards now. No, so I don't think it's going to be, I mean, time-wise, there is something about time-wise and decisions that they make that will kind of either release some heavy burden and move them forward a little bit, but there's not an abrupt out right now, and I didn't think it would be a mellow movement of UK government. Trump, I said it previously, he'll be going down in history. He is currently taking down a lot of what needs to be taken down. Now, please don't come at me. Because what happens if with these, for example, the tariffs, it pushes you to work in your state, in your country, as opposed to externally, globally. Buy your own strawberries. If you're in England, why are we buying from Sainsbury's South African strawberries? Why can't we go to our local market, you know? And it's a shame, like in some cities, smaller cities, they've actually closed the Sunday market, like in, you know, my hometown. They seem to be mellowing it out, and it used to have like the fresh veg and fruit. And I think that needs to come back, because that is the way forward right now. So he is taking down what needs to go, but there was also be some scandals coming up on him separately. Same with Elon Musk. I was also getting for Duck a bit of variation of success at the moment. So this is, again, you know, third week of March. Whether he and the admin see it or not, maybe by May, June, it might be a bit better for him, but he needs not to be overconfident. I think I said this in my last Global Psychic Predictions. I'm saying it again because April is difficult for him. Something about the Army and the Navy, aircraft, military that are doing, it's causing a covering of the traffic control, and the shortage of the traffic air control staff is an issue in the US in particularly. Remember I said about navigation, that could be in any country, any airline. It's the satellite air navigation. I feel like there's someone in the government in the US that might end up being transgender, or rumors that they are transgender. This was a bit of a weird download, but I'm sharing it. In the UK government, something comes out about someone's sexuality, or maybe swinging, you know. In terms of Mark Carney, I believe there's Mark Carney and someone else for Canada. And I don't know where this sits, because again, this is the end of March, but I feel like there's been some instances where someone is playing as Mark Carney. And I wonder if it comes out. If it doesn't, Mark Carney is also a bit dangerous. Like, he would have been close to the groups of like Epi, there's something shady there, okay? But there's some protection for Canada from him, and I don't know if he's the winning party that Canada actually wants. Okay, so that's that.